So what happened in the world of crypto this week? Well, here to talk with me about it is Josh Rogers from Minterest. Josh, welcome.
Thanks very much for having me.
The pleasure. You're joining us all the way from Australia. And generally how we start these programs is for the benefit of folks who may not be familiar with you and your background. Just present a little bio of yourself.
Well, I'm not normally based in Australia. I am Australian, and in fact, I'm normally based in Estonia. Our entire team is actually based in Estonia, but I'm actually in Australia at the moment simply because due to COVID, I haven't seen my daughters for a number of years. So Australia opened up and it enabled myself and my partner the opportunity to come down here. But we have a very significant team that primarily is based in Estonia. So, I'm not complaining. Obviously, it's good to get away from the it's good to get away from the Estonian winter as well. So, any opportunity to do that is welcomed. But, but look, my background in startups goes back a long time. I really started back in the mid to late 90s. Was involved in IP telcos, and then got involved in a content play. I ran a public company in Australia where we did the first monetization of Big Brother 2's content. So that's really going back. Got involved in marketplaces. E-commerce and marketplaces were emerging all through the noughties. So I was really part of riding that wave. Did a lot of work in Asia, a lot of work in Japan and in China, but Japan ostensibly, where you had these models wanting to go global. I'm a founding shareholder and advisor to Freelancer, which is the world's largest freelancing marketplace. I'm the mentor to Rebecca Campbell, who developed Hey You, which became Australia's largest cafe app. So I've done a lot of work in the space. I promised I would never do another startup again, but the opportunity in DeFi is just way too exciting. And really, I think that blockchain is moving into a whole new phase in terms of the incredible value that's getting created. So Minterest is now is my latest venture and something that I'm very, very proud of, and happy to talk to you about.
Yeah, so we're eager to have you tell us about Minterest, when it was founded, and what its business proposition is.
Well, Minterest is a pure lending protocol, and there are lots of lending protocols out there, but when you're looking at pure lending plays that are designed to really take a dominant position, there aren't too many. You're looking at Compound and Aave ostensibly as market leaders. And we've seen lots and lots of experimental variations of lending protocols really wanting to position themselves, into the DeFi space. But no one has really come out with a model that is actually designed ground up to dominate or to really become a sector leader. And that's what Minterest is designed to do. And the way that it does that is it has a completely unique token model. So lending protocols generate or capture value, and they do that through flash loan fees, they do that through liquidation fees, and they do that through interest differential between the various money markets. And what happens with Minterest is that captured value is then used to swap for its own token. It actually goes out and buys back its own token on market automatically, and it distributes its native token back to its users in return for their participation. Now, what that means is that there's no fat in the system. So, users are benefiting very, very significantly from from receiving tokens for participating. We give away to lenders and borrowers, the protocol gives away, to lenders and borrowers tokens for participating. And then what the protocol then does is uses the value that it captures through its own mechanisms to go out and buy back its own token back. And that is a self-supporting, self-funding cycle where, what we've seen up until really this point is we've seen DeFi protocols where the token has no correlation to the performance of the protocol. And what we've done with Minterest is we've linked those two. And that has a very, very powerful impact on the value, on the ability of the protocol to deliver the highest APY in DeFi to its users. And that's the protocol's promise. And that's actually how its model is designed. And that is absolutely what we're about.
Right. So when I go on your website and I look at the Minterest yield calculator, it takes me through things like my liquidity, the boost level, the TVL on Minterest and market price. And then there's different boost 45% NFT boost, et cetera, et cetera. Can you walk us through that,
Right.
for someone who might be new to this whole
Yeah,
world?
look, the calculator is designed for people to be able to create their own assumptions. So if people, we're not in the business of forecasting. We're in the business of providing a calculator mechanism where people can make their own key assumptions, and from doing so, gain some insight into what expected APYs might be inside the protocol. So, and that's all prior to launch. The protocol's still yet to be launched and is coming out shortly. But we wanted to provide ostensibly a calculator that enables people to create their own assumptions and their own and their own inputs. And in doing so, that gives them insight into our claim, which is that that the protocol does provide the highest long-term yields in DeFi.
Yeah.
Now, one of the interesting aspects about that is that we have issued currently, and we're about to issue as part of the launch, a whole series of NFTs. And the NFTs in Minterest are really interesting, apart from the fact that we think they're really beautiful, but they represent the top 100 images of, the images of the top 100 most influential people in blockchain. So we've gotten out to a whole portfolio of digital artists. We've had them create these images, originally from scratch, based on the likenesses of these people. And obviously, the most important of those people is Satoshi. So Satoshi's number one, and then there's a list from 1 through to 100. And what we've done with that list is that we've applied NFTs to them. And the NFTs have various levels of financial benefit when you participate in the protocol. So what that means is that the emissions that you receive from the protocol, you get a boost in, and you can get that boost for up to 3 years. So if you have an emissions boost where we're giving you a 20% to 50% increase in your emissions, that is relatively valuable for liquidity providers. And if you're a medium-sized liquidity provider or a large liquidity provider of, say, $10 million or more, that NFT is extremely valuable to you, because emissions are a significant factor in how you calculate your total returns. So it's a new way of using NFTs that has utility rather than just being a collectible. And like I say, and the other thing that those NFTs do is they act like a VIP card, and they give you access to our private launch or our beta phase. So the protocol will launch in a beta phase, and in the beta phase, there's only a few people able to actually participate, because you have to have an NFT to do so. And that means you have a concentration of users, and that means that the emissions that those users receive should be far more valuable to them, because of that small number of actual participants.
Right.
So, and that beta phase is necessary for the protocol as well. We run it through its paces. It's where the protocol starts to move through to a decentralization structure and architecture. That all gets done in that period. So our NFTs are that VIP card. They're kind of like it's like the VIP card in a nightclub. It's very much the same. It's very much the same with Minterest, and the response we've had to those NFTs has been extraordinary.
Yeah.
So the protocol held a liquidity bootstrapping pool event where 1.4% of the protocol's tokens were sold, and ostensibly Satoshi required up to $1 million spend in order to secure it. And Satoshi was secured during that LBP, as well as some of the other high-ranking NFTs. And the reason why is because large liquidity providers are able to see the quality of the protocol. And what they've done is gone, okay, they've obviously done their own internal mathematics and figured out that the emissions boost they get for up to 3 years is so significant that it's worth $1 million investment. And so we're delighted with that outcome. And obviously there's more NFTs coming. So we'll be releasing more of those as we go into the launch phase of the protocol.
Yeah, I'm looking at the illustration online of Satoshi, and it's quite remarkable, the image that's there. I look at it and I'm thinking, I don't know if that's what he looks like or
well, no, it's actually the Satoshi's actually a variation, or it's a variation of a existing image, which is a bronze. It's a statue, and someone did a bronze statue of Satoshi, which has kind of become a marker for the image of Satoshi. So we just simply took that bronze statue and then turned it into a digital image. And again, we're very proud of the entire portfolio. If you go through the portfolio, you'll see that there's a significant array of digital artists that we use to do that work. Yeah. And we really love the variability. One of the things we said to our artists is like, please, stick to your own style. We didn't want them to be similar. We wanted kind of each level. Each artist was responsible ostensibly for a different level of NFT. And we wanted those different levels to be different in terms of the actual digital image and the style of it. And but we really wanted to have a consistent high quality all the way through. And like so the Satoshi, what I say is it's quite beautiful.
It is. They're all quite beautiful, and we'll be sure to put a link on the video to that page.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we're very proud of it. We think it's a really great high quality marker of the kind of work we do. But we also think those NFTs are going to be very, very sought after by liquidity providers as the protocol, goes through its launch phases.
So I notice as I go down the different levels, there are more NFTs created, 90 for level 6, for instance.
Yeah.
So
So the rarer the NFT, like, so what happens with Satoshi is that there's only one copy. And then when you look at level 2, which has got Vitalik obviously from Ethereum, Gavin Wood from Polkadot, and Adam Buck, there are 3 copies of each of those, and each level has more copies as you go down those levels. And there's a decreasing value that's attributed to those NFTs. So, the lowest levels exist for 3 months, and they provide a 20% increase in emissions and access to the private launch. But Satoshi provides a 50% boost in emissions for up to 3 years.
Yeah.
So it's not just the emissions boost, it's how long it's valid for that really does determine its value. And, or we think will determine its value when the market determines that.
Right.
But these are things that are being given away by the protocol as really for rewards for people participating.
Right.
And that's within the community. There's bonus rewards. We're giving NFTs away as rewards for participation in the community, but mostly we're giving these away as rewards for participating in the protocol's fundraising.
Right. So just a curious question, who determined the rank order of these top 100 folks?
Yeah, no, look, it wasn't me. So what happened was I was involved in it. Our entire team was involved in it. We actually had 6 criteria. We weighted those 6 criteria differently as well. In fact, the most significant weighting of the 6 criteria was longevity, like how long had someone actually been around, but also technical, like technical contribution, like a business contribution, even X factor, like the kind of social impact that this person has whenever they comment, or their social impact within the actual crypto community generally. There were 6 criteria there, and we really reached out across our community to a very significant number of people who were involved in determining it. We reached out to people who were actually leaders of crypto projects, people who had long histories in crypto going right back to say 2011, and who were aware of some of the key players in the origins of crypto. When Bitcoin was really emerging. So yeah, there was a real process to it, and we're actually looking at publishing that as well. So we're still looking at that. That's something we're thinking about publishing, just so that we can get other people's input into it as well. Should we actually, want to fine tune this list? But yeah, I mean, we had some people who are controversial who popped into the list. Because of that longevity weighting, Peter Schiff, I think, came in just inside the top 100, and I think he's been calling, Bitcoin, he's been stating that Bitcoin's been going to blow up ever since it was $15. So, but Peter has been around forever, and he's quite a Bitcoin bear, and his son, I think, is publicly known to disagree with him quite profoundly. And you would argue, well, what does he actually add to, how is he in the top 100? But he has massive X factor. and he has really been around since very, very early on, and he hasn't stopped. So he's one of those characters that's part of actually the whole ecosystem, and we were surprised, but he slipped inside the top 100. So yeah, no, we're really proud of the list, actually.
Yeah, it's quite a who's list. Talk a little bit about the business model of Minterest in terms of how the company's generating revenue and
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So we can get into, there's lots of detail, but at a high level, what happens in lending protocols is that they capture value three ways. So you have what's known as an interest rate differential, which is a big long word. And what that simply means is that there is a difference between what borrowers pay and lenders receive. And that margin difference is value that gets captured by the protocol. Now, in other lending protocols, what they do is they also have what are called liquidators. And what that means is you have third parties, so people who actually scan the protocol looking for insolvency events. And an insolvency event happens when someone is under collateralized. That means their collateral that they've provided for the loan is no longer sufficient. And these third-party liquidators come in and they buy their position out and they repay the loan account. So what we've done in Minterest is something completely unique, and we've built the entire liquidation function into the protocol itself. So the protocol runs its own liquidation engine. It actually manages all of those liquidations itself. And in doing so, it captures the value of the fee that the liquidators themselves would normally capture. The protocol gets that itself. Now, what that has just done is make, on a one-for-one basis, Minterest has just become far more profitable than any other protocol because it's able to capture value where someone else can't. Every other lending protocol is giving all of that fee structure away to third-party liquidators, and it's not for the benefit of people on the protocol itself. So the protocol captures all of that, and then it goes and spends it on its own token. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, it then distributes that token back to its users. Now, the reason for doing that is because of the huge value creation that users actually generate. So the value of any platform at all is always created by its users. And so what's happening here is that Minterest is capturing all the value that is possible to capture inside the system, and it's using that to then redistribute it back to its users for participating. And that's a very, very capital efficient system. So Minterest Labs doesn't take any profit share at all. All of that value capture is designed for the protocol itself and for the benefit of its users. And we think that's a super, super efficient capital system. And what that means, obviously, is that you've got the protocol out there buying its own token ongoingly, and consistently. And that has an impact on the value that those tokens then have at the front end. Because when we're giving lenders and borrowers tokens as a reward for lending and borrowing, suddenly the protocol is having an influence on that value just through its on-market buying. And so that becomes a very, very sustainable system because it's a self-enclosed system. And what you have is you have liquidity driving the protocol's ability to capture value. And the more that it does that, the more that its buyback is able to participate and go out and buy its own token. That obviously has an impact on the value of the token. And what that then does is attract more liquidity. And that becomes a self-reinforcing flywheel effect. And that flywheel effect is unique in crypto. And it's a very, very powerful network effect. It's a brand new network effect that doesn't exist elsewhere. And it's something that we're very confident that we actually have crunched the numbers on, and it has the protocol outcompete. It means that it's always generating a bigger, longer term APY or a higher, longer yield than other protocols on a one-for-one basis. You're basically not giving any money away. There's no dilution of the protocol's value that it captures. It's not being bled off to the benefit of small independent third parties. The whole thing is captured for the benefit of the ecosystem of users. We think it's more efficient. We think it's fairer, but more importantly, for users of DeFi, it delivers them a higher long-term yield.
Right. So for folks who might want to do a deeper dive, there's a 22-page white paper on your website where they can find out even more than what we can talk about in a 30-minute.
Yeah, look, I'd love to be able to talk about DeFi sometimes in terms that aren't too jargony, but there's a lot of jargon in the sector. What we've done is we've obviously fleshed that out into a white paper, and we'd like to think that the white paper is not too crazy in terms of its technical jargon. So we've actually segmented we actually have a technical paper as well, really to kind of deep dive into the technical mathematics of the protocol and keep that separate, just so it's not too dominating. But really, yeah, the white paper is where the meat of how the protocol works all is.
Right. So Dr. The company is venture backed, I assume, at the moment.
Yeah, look, we've had numerous fundraisings. So we're backed by a very strong portfolio of VCs. And there's a very significant strategic design in how we went about that. I've actually written a blog on that, and I've done a few podcasts actually explaining that strategy. We're delighted with the relationships we have with our investors, like really delighted. So there's a very strong backing. The business is absolutely financially backed in terms of the team's funding to deliver the protocol. That's very secure. We're going through audits right now. We've just had Trail of Bits, which we're about to publish, complete their audit. We've got 2 more audit firms that are coming through and completing their audit process. And then we're looking to really move into a pre-launch and then launch phase. So the protocol Minterest will launch in 2 phases. It'll launch in a private phase, which is where there's restricted access. And the only way that you can access the protocol during that phase is by holding an NFT. And there's lots more news coming out about that as we move into that phase. And then we're going to go into a full public launch. And that's a fairly normal way in terms of launching, a high quality, high value project like ours. The other thing to mention is actually the sheer scale of the project. We're a team of 50 currently, and like I say, a fully funded team of 50. And the reason for that is that the code base for Minterest is the most significant that we are aware of in DeFi. It's a very significant code base, just simply because of the new innovation that we're bringing to the space.
So before we move on to current events, anything that we failed to talk about with respect to Minterest?
Look, I think that's covered it. I can go on all day about Minterest, but really, the recap is that we're building something that's designed to really be for the benefit of all of the protocol's users, and something that we call DeFi 2.0, which is where you have a big community that self-funds. The protocol is self-funding for the benefit of its large community. And Minterest is designed to go out and take a sector leader role. It's not designed to be one of many. It's architected to generate very powerful network effects that ensure that it really does take a very strong and meaningful position in DeFi and makes a strong contribution to the sector as a whole.
So let's turn our attention to current events right now, where I guess the most pressing news is the Russian invasion, the war in Ukraine, and what impact, if any, has that had on Minterest?
Yeah. Look, it's had a big one. I mean, I'm Australian. I live in Estonia, but about 75% of our team are native Russian speakers. We have a big Ukrainian team contingent. We have a big Belarusian contingent, and we have Russian people as well. We have a team who are uniformly against what is happening in Ukraine, and quite vehemently so, and it has a direct impact on us. We have actually just last week, we had some confidence that we would be able to contain the fallout from Ukraine, and that that wouldn't affect our whole front end and our front end delivery, and that has not been the case. Literally last week, we lost all of our capacity on the front end of the business. Our digital design agency has kind of gone into flight for safety, and we have 6 people currently in Ukraine, and we are just working like mad to get them safe as well and their families safe. So we really have lost, significant front-end capacity, which is going to delay our launch. And we don't even yet know to the degree to which it has. We're scrabbling to replace that capability. And we've reached out again through to our networks to do that. But this is not something that is conceptual and on TV for us. Like I say, most of our team come from countries that are Russian speaking. And even within our Estonian team, we have a large contingent of Russian speaking people because it's an alternative language inside of Estonia. And so it's very real, and it has a psychological impact as well, just because, like I say, it's happening next door. Yeah. And look, like everything about this is just horrific from our perspective. And we've got a team that are strongly united about that. We've got some news that we will be releasing in the ways that we're able to best support. We really do want to strongly support Ukraine in its fight against Russia. And we're working inside the team right now to do that in a way that we believe is meaningful. But really, our core focus right now is making sure our people are safe.
Yeah, well, I hope it is heart-wrenching, and I do hope that they're safe and it comes to as peaceful a resolution as possible.
Oh, mate, it's just something I've never experienced before, where it directly impacts you, and I've grown up watching war on TV, and I haven't been in the armed forces, or I'm not a soldier, or I haven't had that kind of experience at all. So this is the first time where something like this has really impacted people directly that I know. And it's not just me; it's the whole team. Like we're all very aware of this, and it's just deeply, deeply sad, deeply kind of disappointing that the world has backpedaled like this. And we were all hoping that this kind of rubbish was behind us, but unfortunately it's not.
Not yet, no. The other major news that at least caught my attention this week was President Biden here in the U.S. issuing an executive order with respect to regulating cryptocurrency. Any reaction to that? And
well, finally. I don't have a problem with regulation at all. In fact, I like good regulation is a good idea. But it's been very difficult when you've got the regulator sitting on the sideline in the US anyway, sitting on the sideline, kind of waving a stick, but without actually any definitive position. So, whatever sort of regulatory position the US does come out with, the market will adapt and change to suit that. But I think the opportunity is for the US to come out with something creative as well. And it'll be interesting to see whether they can step up to that opportunity. Crypto and DeFi present a new opportunity or a new way of looking at how do you actually, like, what is the purpose of regulation and protecting people? Fine, great. But how do you actually apply that inside of an environment like crypto, where there's an internal culture that very strongly likes the way things are. And, it'll be interesting to see how the US reacts to that. The statements we've seen out of the SEC of trying to use, a regulatory framework that goes back to the 1930s, obviously is disappointing. But hopefully with Biden's executive order, what we'll see is someone actually looking at this in a much more creative way and really within a 21st century mindset. And if that does happen, it could be very positive for the entire sector.
Yeah. I'm always hopeful that Gensler, given his knowledge of crypto and his position at MIT, is in a better position than most to make it forward thinking instead of backward looking.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. And also, like, we've just seen this huge technological revolution in the last 20 years. As you've seen digital platforms emerge, Google and Facebook, etc. But they're the big motherships. But when you consider the impact that platforms have had on the economy globally in the last 20 years, it's been massive. And part of that, governments are still trying to figure out how to regulate them properly. And, we could argue about whether or not they've done a good job or not. But but crypto is definitely a subset of that. And, it does, it's just, there's a real opportunity here to create something that flourishes. And like I say, yeah, it would be great to see the US come out with something intelligent that really does both support people, but also supports the entire sector.
Yeah. So speaking of platforms, Zuckerberg made news with respect to Instagram's NFT plan. Any thoughts about that?
Oh, look, it's always probably better to say no comment. But look, I think it's a reactive move by Instagram. I think one of the things that they're trying to move NFTs into the mainstream and collectibles into the mainstream, and I'm skeptical. And one of the reasons why NFT collectibles are so desired is because of this. Is because of this kind of network effect of knowledge. There's a very high bar that's required by users to participate in crypto generally. You really have to go down a rabbit hole to figure out how to do it. It's not something that your grandmother can do easily. And you do have to spend some time really educating your own self. And that's part of the excitement of it. That's part of the bond or the community aspect of being in crypto. And NFTs are a subset even of that again. And so that's what makes it so exciting for people, in my view. And I think that when you try and break this out into the general community, that's not necessarily going to work. It's a hard sell to explain to someone why a JPEG is worth something, and it's quite a unique value proposition. So look, I'm intrigued to see how it goes.
Yeah. So those were headlines that crossed my path in terms of what caught my interest. Are there things that didn't make the headlines or did make the headlines?
Look, I think there's a really I kind of have this pithy line I say, which is that I have only one competitive advantage in life, and that is I'm older than everybody else. And I've been involved in startups now for about 25 years, and one of the things I'm seeing very much is that crypto is really going through a replay of 99-2000 in terms of the tech boom and then the tech crash. Now, we're not seeing a huge crash in crypto, but we are seeing a correction. But when you look back to 98, 99, 2000, you really did see this enormous flourishing of what could only be described as experiments. Everybody was having a go at what they thought might work. In the newly emerging internet, and most people really didn't have a clue, and I know because I was one of them. And you're really seeing a lot of that happening in crypto and in DeFi as well. You've got all of these kind of projects that are coming out that are largely experimental and that are getting funding because there's a boom in the market, and so suddenly everything gets funded. And what happens in a correction is that the market changes quite significantly, and we're seeing the same play. It's a crypto flavored play, but it's just, in my view, it's the same play as we saw back in 2000, and that is that a lot of these projects won't survive, and probably shouldn't survive. But what you were seeing is a flight to quality, and you're going to see people really get behind and back projects that provide long-term value, and that make real sense and create real value for their participants. And that's right across the entire crypto sphere. But the other thing that we saw post 2000 was that there was this concentration of users around projects that generated the most significant network effects, and they were the ones that created the most value. I mean, Facebook and Google are just two obvious examples, but there are thousands of those examples. And if you weren't able to do that, then your project didn't survive. And I think that we're seeing the same thing emerging already in crypto, where we are seeing a real shakeout occurring across smaller projects that could survive in a boom environment, but really when things started to tighten up, no longer are viable. And from a Minterest perspective, that's really good news. And the reason why is because we're built for this environment. We're built to actually shine in when network effects is what matters. And how do you actually generate long-term value for your users? In a boom, everyone's a genius. And it's kind of often hard to get heard when you're a project that is in inverted commas sensible, yeah. and where there's so many other things that are flourishing, and just simply because they're in a boom environment where their token price is able to, is to drive the model, and that no longer is happening. So, yeah, for me, it looks like a replay. It really does look like a replay of 98, 99, 2000. And that's probably a really good thing. And one of the reasons why is that the lessons that got learned from that process for traditional tech meant that it like the last time we had a tech crash was 2000. Mm-hmm. And really what you've seen is 22 years of very, very high value creation occur. There's this freight train of value creation where, these platforms are constantly building out and developing new user cases, new ways of actually serving people. And that freight train left the station in 2000 for traditional tech. And I really believe that freight train's left the station for crypto. Yeah. And so I think that's crypto is a subset really of the whole platform economy. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a really exciting time, but having a model that won't survive, like a market correction like this is a real test. And so I think a lot of the noise, a lot of the white noise that we saw last year is going to get cleared out. Yeah. And I think that's good news. Yeah.
As you were talking, I'm reminded of that saying about never confusing intelligence with a bull market, which
I got to tell you, it's really frustrating because you're trying to talk about, we think there's a fairly significant degree of intelligence in the Minterest model. There's an enormous amount of thinking in how this is put together. No one cares. Yeah. And now they do, but 6 months ago they didn't. And so it's not a great time necessary for fundraising. We don't need to. We don't care about that. But from our perspective, it's a great time to launch because this is really when you sort the men from the boys. Yeah. And here we come.
So I'm going to ask you to go out on a limb here and make some predictions. You said some may not survive in a world where you've got, Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, Cardano. Any thoughts about what survives and what doesn't?
Look, the answer is I think you're going to see like a big 3 or 4 or 5 networks that will actually, you'll see a concentration of users around that. So, things like Solana, Solana has a value proposition, just like Polkadot does. It has a value proposition for a whole emerging enterprise that Ethereum is still struggling to satisfy. So I do think that there's a really significant role for some of these alternative networks, and I don't think that that's going to go away. But Ethereum's network effects are really extraordinary and far stronger than I thought they would be. Money the liquidity that we're seeing in DeFi stay on Ethereum is very sticky, and has surprised us. The degree to which liquidity is staying on liquidity is staying on Ethereum and has not moved into other networks, which was a key assumption that everyone thought would happen probably about 12 months ago. That hasn't happened. And that's, so like gas prices are no longer the key concern everyone thought they once were. And the reason why is the sheer size of liquidity providers in DeFi. It's no longer, DeFi is not actually driven by the small holder. It's driven by these large liquidity providers, and what they care about is network security, and they don't care about gas fees. And so you've really seen this extraordinary concentration of liquidity occurring on Ethereum, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Yeah. Not dramatically. And but I do think these other alternative networks, really do have they have value that what they create as value, you will see being taken up. They'll come up with other user cases, and especially for the enterprise space. There's a whole range of level of security and architectural security that enterprise is seeking that they can't yet get on Ethereum. And I imagine that'll support them very, very well. Right. But look, there are networks that I think are in real trouble, and you'd have to think that Terra is in a difficult place. Terra is currently funding its token price by pumping out emissions, and those emissions are being pumped out in a way that is unsustainable. And how much longer can it do it? So that Terra had it had the most liquidity of any network outside of Ethereum. It actually had more liquidity on its network than Binance, but that model was built around a boom economy, and that doesn't exist anymore. And that model's in trouble. So unless that community can redesign it and re-architect it in a new way, it could be one of the ones that we actually see disappear as well.
Yeah.
So there's a call for it.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot of ground. Before we wrap up, any last thoughts? Any closing thoughts?
Oh, look, I'm really looking forward to the rest of this year, despite what's happening in Ukraine and the war that's happening there, and Russia's invasion. We're moving into a much more mature market now. We're launching Minterest is an exciting aspect for us. Our launch is really only our first step as well. There's a whole ecosystem play. There's a whole range of other things that are coming in cross-chain functionality is also part of that play. So for us, it's a really interesting, exciting year, and we're looking forward to be out there.
Well, Josh, I want to thank you for being on This Week in Crypto with us. It's greatly appreciated.
My pleasure. And look, thank you for having me on, and apologies if I got too jargony.
That's okay. You made it. You made the jargon more than understandable.
Okay, cool. Okay, good. I appreciate that.